Hello again, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Book Talk with Cindy slash your regular book launch. Okay, your average book launch. All right. I'm really happy that you're with us today because we have another tete-a-tete with an author, and if you've known me that long, I really love discussions on books and poetry and literature. Okay, especially for the poetry genre. Okay, and our featured book and author for this afternoon is of course poetry. Okay, and it's pretty obvious from the ticker across the screen to Poetry with Love by J.K. Samson. Okay, mati ko na sabi J.K. Rowling. What is J.K. Samson and who is J.K. Samson? Okay, he spends his time on many hobbies including writing, reading, and gaming. He enjoys playing tabletop games, drinking coffee, traveling here and there, and watching animated TV shows when he is not busy. He has published poems since he was in college in their campus journal, and three of which are An Advice from Him Who Was Once Dead, Twilight Falls and Nighttime Crawls, and The Pawns. Currently, he teaches high school English in the morning and studies law in the evening. Please welcome J.K. Samson. Hello, J.K.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Chris. Thank you for having me today.
Well, thank you for thank you for being with us. Okay, and thank you for sharing your talent and love for poetry. Okay, sige, let's dive into the main event. Okay, yung unang-unang tanong ko kasi would be dun pa lang sa title mo, To Poetry with Love, it's already parang given that you love poetry so much, and this is like a love song or a love letter to poetry. Okay, why is poetry your can we say it's your favorite genre? Why is it your chosen slash favorite genre?
Well, definitely poetry. I would actually always attribute that poetry is my first love. But why poetry? Ever since I was in high school, I was young. I've always been fascinated about the works of poets. Um, if you get the time to read my poems, especially for our audience, you will see that this is like a summary of my devotion for poetry. I've always been devoted ever since I think as early as first year high school. No, I've always been devoted about poetry. uh, I've struggled with this kind of devotion because sometimes sometimes I feel like um, I'm setting it aside for other things. Uh, but overall, I've written a lot of other works. I've written short stories. I've written essays. In fact, I've written novel drafts. Kasi, alam mo, ganyan tayo mga writers eh. Minsan magsusulat tayo ng novel, tapos di natin tatapusin. But I always go back to poetry. I always go back to writing them, and I've come to terms with the idea na there was a time that I've said, yes, I've decided that the genre that I will probably keep on writing and will probably write until the end of time is poetry. So yeah, to answer your question, why poetry? It's something that I've always been fascinated with. I love reading it. I love writing it. I love the way that um, some people find comfort in it. I love the way that some people are inspired by it. And in the same way, I find comfort, I find inspiration, and I find peace whenever I read and write poetry. And I hope to share these feelings to everyone who may be able to come across my work and other works that I also love reading and sharing.
Alam mo, I remember, kasi when I first read your manuscript, 'di ba? Na oh, this kind of reminds me of actually Cindy and I were talking. Sabi ko, oh, his poems actually remind me of classics kasi may mga you will see that in the structure, in the style. So sabi ko, very rare na rin siguro, or siguro hindi naman ganun ka-rare, but not everybody follows the kumbaga old school, quote and unquote, diba? The old school type of writing poetry kasi ano ba yung ginagawa ngayon, parang prose poetry,
Yeah. Yeah.
tapos yung free verse. So it requires a cert this is not to say walang discipline yung free verse, ha, meron, pero iba
Definitely.
rin yung discipline, 'di ba? Nung may structure ka, yung nga sa classics. Um, when siguro noon bago tayo pumunta doon sa preparations mo for the book, no, when you were younger, kasi dati ka pa nagsusulat ng poetry,
That's right.
how did you learn this? Or for example, did you just read a lot, or did you have any formal schooling, or did you study carefully how a certain poet, for example Edgar Allan Poe, ganyan, or Homer, did you carefully study how they wrote their poetry? Paano yung naging ano mo daw? Paano yung learning process mo muna?
Uh yes, no, that's an interesting story. Kasi when I was in first year high school, I remember there was this homework that we had to write. We had to write a poem. So when I submitted the poem, I felt that it wasn't correct. Because back then, I don't know what poetry is. We were asked to write a poem. We were told that poetry rhymes, poetry has syllabication. So when I submitted a poem, I felt like I just made sure that the syllables are the same per line, that there is rhyme, and it's standard. There's 4 lines per poem. So what I did, I started writing that way. Now I have to make sure that every syllable, sorry, every line has the same syllable, and there is a proper rhyme scheme. Uh, so much so that when I remember when I was in fourth year high school, I was kind of that was probably one of my most prolific year na there's always a poem every week. I remember that when I write the first line, I write the first line. I actually write at the start of the line the number of syllables. So this line has 12 syllables. So that all the other lines should have 12 syllables. And I have to make sure that there's a minimum of 4 stanzas. And then that's just how I got used to writing, to the point that I actually, when I was a bit older in college, and when I became a professional, whenever the blank verses and the free verse poems come out, I'm actually I actually feel like napag-iwanan na ako, because the way I write poems, there's still the old way, that there's still the old style that people write them. When in fact, during those times, we already have the free verse, we already have the blank verse, and they're beautiful. So parang I felt that the way I write is archaic. But again, I tried to do it, but komportable na ako dun sa style na ginagawa ko. It's not to say that I don't want to keep trying the free verse, but um I think it's just the number of years that I've been doing that kind of writing. Plus, you're right, I've read works of Robert Frost, Edgar Allan Poe, and this is the way they write. There's a standard number of syllables. There's a rhyme scheme, and um, I follow the way they write. So all these years of writing that way, all the literature, or all the poems that I've read written in that way, um, I think. I just find that this is the comfort zone in a way in writing poems. Uh, and this is how I am able to better express and share my thoughts. So um I think this is one thing that some of my readers may be able to expect, that yes, the way it's written is still in the traditional style, but somehow I try to use words that would normally be used in free flow, free verses, and in modern poetry.
Alam mo, JK, isa lang ang masasabi ko, no? Ang tula ay tula. And,
That's right.
however you want to write it, di ba? Kasi, yes, we can say that, oh, luma ito, or makaluma yung style. But, you come from a different time, di ba? And, yung laman, no? The content, what you write about, that will always be new and personal. So, pagdating sa bagay niya, hindi naman siya parang it's not like you're recycling things or you're recycling or echoing what the ano ba tawag natin sa kanila what the forefathers parang sobrang luma naman ng forefathers 'di ba pero what those people na mga nauna na dun sa ganyang sa ganyang style pwedeng pare-pareho din ng experience in a way, universal experience, but iba pa rin yung karanasan nila, iba yung danas nila, iba yung danas mo. So I think nare-refresh, no, or nabibigyan ng panibagong perspective, I think.
Yeah,
So thank you for sharing that. Yung binanggit mo, Robert Frost, sino yung isa?
Edgar
Si
Allan Poe.
Edgar Allan Poe. Sila na ba yung inspiration mo? Kasi may tanong si si Keith Samson, no? Did you have an author inspiration growing up? Or sila na to? Sila na talaga yung parang inspo, kumbaga.
Originally, kasi well, there's really no author when I was growing up, kasi the books that I got, they're just a random compilation of books with different authors. So, parang compilation lang siya ng book na iba-iba yung authors. And then I just read them. But probably if it's influence, if it's about heavy influence, then I would go with Edgar Allan Poe, and Edgar Allan Poe first, and then Robert Frost second. Although isa lang naman yung talagang poem na mastered ko about Robert Frost. The rest I just read along the way. But the way that Robert Frost writes about nature is something that is so relaxing kasi and comforting na talagang it's as if you're chill ka lang eh pag si Robert Frost. Literal chill kasi Frost, 'di ba? So
Right.
but that's one.
Fire and Ice. Right?
That's right, 'di ba?
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to Edgar Allan Poe, chilling kasi medyo may horror eh, 'di ba? Pero
Mm-hmm.
in a way, it's the way he writes his poem that makes it impressive. And it's something that I've always aspired to achieve, the way he's able to master the craft.
Is that also why many of your poems are about the stars, the rain, may connection din siya sa nature? Or may
Uh,
iba pang meaning din yon?
well, one that's one, right? I always found inspiration in nature, but on another sense, because this is like a representation. The poems talk about, it's a persona talking about poetry, talking
Mm-hmm.
to poetry, talking about his struggles with poetry and his struggles with other things that he sets poetry aside. And the in the poems that I write, or that I wrote, rather, uh, these things in nature, the universe, the stars, the rain, diba? I think that's the cover photo, the rain. Um, it's about his struggle with the cosmos. Na what's the significance of this devotion to poetry? What's the what's the point, right? In the greater
Mm-hmm.
scheme of things, so what if I write and I
Wait,
love
yeah.
poetry, eh ano naman, 'di ba? And that's where the struggle begins, 'di ba? Kung parang wait, kung wala pala tong punto, if there's nothing, if there's no point to this thing, then what am I writing for? But if again, of course, at the end of that compilation, we see in a way how the speaker um, comes to terms with this with these struggles, or does he, diba? Does the speaker rather, does he or she come to terms with these?
So the persona had this huge, ano ba tawag dito? Parang existential question. Okay. There's
Yes,
this
parang
huge
ganon,
existential
adoration,
question.
existential question.
Yeah. About poetry or his or her struggles with poetry. But as an author, you may have asked yourself the same question. And that leads us to the next question then, what was the process when you were writing this book? Kaninong tanong ba yan? Tanong yan ni Aaron Bermudez, no?
Ah,
What was the process? What personal preparations have you done or did you do while you were writing or before you began writing this book? And of course, I'm sure, well, you can correct me later, but I'm sure na nag-contemplate ka din dun sa struggles na yun. I'm so sure about that. Sige, pwede mo
that's
ikwento.
right, no. Actually, I actually could track kung kailan ko sinusulat yung mga poems, kasi one of the signatures that I've done, at least just for safekeeping, but I think hindi ko na siya include in the publishing, is that I write the dates that the poems were written. Um, and when I was looking at this compilation, I realized most of these poems were written during the pandemic. No? So the process, well, on a more technical side, how do I start writing ba, di ba? Um well, I just find a quiet time to be able to write. Probably one of the exercises that I do when before I write is I just sit in silence. Parang weird, di ba? Parang nakakatakot. Pero I just sit in silence, no music at all, nothing, and then just stare in blankness. Um, and I do that at home, kasi parang if I do that in public, baka isipin ng mga tao ba't ako nakatulala, eh, di ba? Pero kidding aside, that's one. I try to collect my thoughts, and I try to make sense of my thoughts in my head first. And then when I feel like it already, hopefully, after that meditation, if you could say, I grab a paper and start writing a poem. And of course, that's a trial and error process, because sometimes I already got the word, and then there's a better word, so I replace it. But the better word, here comes the standard writing style. The better word will either destroy the number of syllables or destroy the rhyme scheme. So babaguhin mo yung buong stanza pag ganun. Um, and that's the technical side. But the process in which this compilation was written, most of the poems here are written during the pandemic, uh, be- uh, came because during those times, I felt like, in the same way that I've said, I felt like my writing of poetry has no purpose. Diba? My writing of poetry has no purpose. In Before the pandemic, it feels like writing of poetry is an excellent thing to do. It's a beautiful thing to do. And then the pandemic struck, and I realized, with all the lockdowns, with all yung mga nagkakasakit, um, and then kailangan na ng mga medical frontliners, uh, ng mga ng mga peace and order officers para maayos lahat. I realized, parang wait, so there's a lot of people doing a lot of things out there, and what am I doing? Di ba? Anong ginagawa ko? Susulat ng tula. Parang, huh? What? How does that help? No? And to the point na there are poems that I wrote. Some of them are not in this compilation, which actually questions my being my being just a writer on those days. Na parang I struggled na I struggled with that thought na paano ako makakatulong kung ganito lang ang ginagawa ko. And I think this compilation is that answer. Yes, I guess my poetry at the end of the day, it will not heal the sick or help the people in that way. Pero in a way, I hope that my poems sorry, I hope that my poems inspire people to and remind people that the world is beautiful, no? Maganda ang buhay. And may mga struggles tayo, may mga hiccups, may mga bagay na hindi natin nagugustuhan, naiintindihan. But I do hope that my poems at the end of the day remind people that um there's more to life, no? And sometimes it depends sa tao. Some of us can accept that quickly. Some of us can accept that for a long, long time pa. And that's okay. It's okay. It's a process. And when I started to realize that that could be that could be why I'm writing. I started writing all these poems. I really did. Na sometimes some of them are forced. Of course, pag forced, medyo sinasantabi ko parang, pilit ka eh, di ba? Pag pilit ka, titignan pa kita mamaya, uulitin kita. But for those na talagang na-edit and nakuha niya yung, kumaga, it got the point. I added them in the collection. And at the end, now that I'm seeing the select few poems, um, I hope that it does what it intends to do, or what I hope it intends to do. That it inspires people that who are struggling. That there's more to life, and there's no such thing as useless. There's no such thing as no point. Uh, lahat ng bagay may punto. Lahat ng bagay may katuturan. At and if we ever think na walang katuturan ng mga bagay na ito, let's just remember that just like the way that these poems are written to poetry, for as long as what we do is done out of love, then there's always meaning in it. There's always purpose in it. And there's always beauty in it. Just like this dedication to poetry with love. Hello, Chris? You're still there?
Ay, hindi. Okay, hello. Hindi
Hello,
pala
hello.
ano, nagsasalita ako, hindi pala nadidinig. Okay. Sorry for that. So as I was saying, no, I was flashing the comments kanina, and I think yeah, here's it. Here it is. There's more to life, powerful. Yan. Sabi ni Ma'am Gladys and Samson. So, may kinu-quote ka na, quotable ka na. Okay. Kaka-launch mo pala, quotable ka na. Okay, before I ask you to read an excerpt, para, magkaroon din ng idea yung iba nating viewers who have not yet seen any of your works or poems, total nasa usapin na tayo ng struggle, di ba? When we write, tayo yung nagsaslash nung akda natin minsan, di ba? We decide, okay, this one gets in, or this one is going to be included in the collection, and this one maybe not. Kanina kinukwento mo, di ba? May mga hindi ka na isinama.
Ah,
Was there ever a time that you also had been rejected? A poem of yours was rejected. I'm sure marami makaka-relate nito kasi usaping ano to eh, usaping rejection, and medyo mahirap minsan. It's a bitter pill to swallow. Okay, so how do you deal with that? Because it's also a struggle with many creators, with many artists.
um, siguro rejection in general, hindi lang yung sa not only with my written work, because I've been rejected a lot. Ang nakakalungkot pa nga in my recent submissions kasi I've tried to submit also poems, hindi lang sa publishers, but also in some, yung, di ba, there are also magazines that
Mm-hmm.
that get your, or that takes your, magazines that take your work, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Um, when my work is rejected, sometimes wala ngang letter eh. You just realize they didn't take it, di ba?
Mm-hmm.
Um, how I deal with it, of course, honestly, it hurts me, di ba? Parang masakit siya.
Syempre.
It hurts to be rejected. Um, but I just keep writing. Of course, at a certain point, parang mapaparalyze ka eh. Hindi ka magsusulat for a few days. Hindi ka kikilos for a few days. Kasi, why is life unfair? Di ba? Ba't
Mm-hmm.
ganun?
Mm-hmm.
But for as long as, for you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself that you can do it. And to friends of people, kung may mga kilala kayong mga artists, poets, or just everyone, um kung if you think that they are, if you think that they're struggling on achieving something, you have to believe in them. You have to believe in them, because sometimes that person no longer believes in himself. I'd like to quote one, if I may, no, one of my favorite anime characters. Well, cartoon slash anime character. See Uncle Iroh from Avatar. In one of the favorite quotation, he says, "While it's true to, while it is best to believe in oneself, a help from others can be a great blessing." And I've realized that na it's not enough that you believe in yourself. Others, you have to look for others who believe in you, and you have to believe in others as well. Kailangan maniwala ka sa ibang tao. You have to believe that there's good in them. You have to believe that there is success and triumph in them.
Community, right? That's true. No, you just maybe you just have to find a certain community
That's
where
right.
people will appreciate your work. So bakit ko ba natanong yun? Kasi well, having uh written poetry myself, hindi naman lahat yun parang okay, no? May marami ding rejection. So when you write, it's not as if you're just going to write and okay na agad. It goes through a process. Minsan people will tell you, hindi pwede to, or you'll get a lot of criticism. Okay. Kahit the best writers we know today, they probably received criticism before. So ang sagot, like you said, is magpatuloy, di ba? Magpatuloy if you
Right.
really love what you're doing, and then you just keep working on your craft, working on your skill. At ngayon makikita na natin. Ang galing sumegue, no? Ang galing mag-transition. Makikita na natin ngayon ang skill ni J.K. Samson. Okay, please read us an excerpt. I am going to put you on the spotlight. Ayan, sige. Mamaya, meron tayong nakabinbin, nakapending na isang tanong. Siguro sa before we end, saka natin siya iaakyat. Okay,
Sige.
ready ka na?
All right. Yeah, I've selected one of the poems. Sige. So for everyone, I'm going to read you one poem from the compilation. The title is "If After Tonight I Do Not Write." If after tonight I do not write, where will all of my poems go? Will there ever be who remember me? Will my poems in eternity flow? Will they be read and will they be said? Will my poems fill the world with glee? Will my poems resound in tomes unbound? Will my poems be open and free? Will they be like me in a decade or three, be forgotten in the endless time? Will my poems, my writings, my name and my likings be insignificant when words no longer rhyme? If after tonight I fail to write, I will falter with heavy regret. And my poems, which were once what gave life to this man, in the end, all will forget. Like that life, all will forget. If after tonight I do not write. Thank you.
Grabe. Ganda nun, ah. If after tonight. Medyo babalik-balik ta rin ko na lang kasi di ko na matandaan yung lines. But yung talagang tumama sa akin would be, if after tonight I will not write, I would forget, or all will forget, something like that.
I will
Tama
falter
naman.
with heavy regret.
Ayun, grabe. Sabi ni Sir Chris, ayan, ni Sir Tokayo. Sir Chris, like it. Ayan, amazing. Can't wait to have my copy of the book. Thank you so much. Alam mo, just to say this, no, at ito naman, walang bola, no? Hindi porke, naka-feature ka ngayon, binobola kita. Pero kasi, iba yung dating pag binasa. I mean, iba siya. Sabi nga, guys, alam nyo ba na ito ay ni-review ni Mitch Alagaw? Okay. So, sabi niya, simple pero powerful. Okay? Yung magandang introduction yung mga tula ni JK. Kung gusto niyo magsulat ng poetry. And iba rin yung binabasa namin siya compared to sa naririnig ko na siya ngayon. Mas may ano siya, JK, parang mas, syempre, mas may feelings, mas may tatak. Mas may hugot siya. And, well, yun, masasabi ko na pagka ganun, if you have that kind of power, well, you really are a writer, you know. You
Thank you,
really
thank
are a
you.
poet. Oo. Ayan. At yung mga, ayan. Sabi ni Tan, Lorraine? Is it Lorraine? Okay. If after tonight I do not write, so pure. Okay. Sabi ni Sonia, rejection may be considered a challenge for poets like you. Accept it and improve your craft. Yan. Your passion in writing is so warm and very human. Tama. At yan yung mismong, yung core nung kanyang libro, no, To Poetry with Love. So it's not all about, uh, ano ba tawag doon? Para the highs of
Yeah,
writing poetry. Merong lows din yan. Okay. Send me
there's
a copy.
struggles.
Ayan na yung mga fans. Okay. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
before we end, ang taas ng energy, okay? Before we end, okay, sagutin lang natin yung tanong ni Kim, baka makatulong tayo, no? Congratulations, Sir JK. May I know what is your message for those who are still seeking interest in poetry? Siguro, whether or not whether you're writing, you want to write, or you want to start reading poetry.
Yeah. No, so, what is your message for those who are still seeking interest in poetry? If it's reading poetry, we'll just grab grab a copy of this book, no? Tapos basa lang kayo. And there are also other excellent poets right now, no? So just you could actually head to Eight Letters. Marami kaming mga writers dito who are writing poems for everyone. So just read them para you get inspired by their work. And if it's in writing, what's your message for those who are still seeking interest in writing poetry? Start now. Magsulat ka. Make the words rhyme even if it doesn't make sense. Or it doesn't have to rhyme. Just write your thoughts. One line, two lines, a stanza, one poem a day for every day. In a month, ilang poems na yun, di ba? Just start writing, no? Eventually you will find your craft. Eventually you will learn the techniques by studying, by sharing it with community, with a community of writers, or by just probably mimicking someone's technique. You will learn those things. So whether it's reading or writing poetry, my advice is start today. As in now na, 'di ba? Like after this launch, go find a random poem online, go grab a random anthology, go grab this anthology, no? And hopefully it inspires you to have that interest and it sparks that interest in you.
Thank you for that advice. Pagdating ng siguro midnight, baka may mga nagsusulat na dyan. Paggabi pa naman, masarap magsulat, di ba?
That's
And
right.
talagang
That's right.
tahimik, ramdam na ramdam mo. And meron dito nakakatuwang comment din from Sir Chris again, your heart speaks. Totoo yan. Lalo na
Thank you
when you're
po.
writing poetry, di ba? Yung emotion natin ay lumalabas. May nagpi-pre-order na. My goodness. Thank you and congratulations. Okay, grab your copies now. Gusto ko rin yon. Nakapag-plug ka na. Okay. Thank you, thank you. Ayan, we have reached our mark now, you know, so we have to wrap up our show. Thank you, JK, for this wonderful discussion with you, and
Thank you.
we will
Thank you.
continue the discussion. Okay, sa GC. Okay, but to the rest of you who watched, who stayed for 30 minutes or so, thank you so much for the support for JK. And please do grab a copy of To Poetry with Love. It's available in the Eight Letters bookstore. You can also send a message to JK. JK, you have a Facebook page. Can you invite
Yes.
them, please?
That's right. So, or to all those who are already following my author page and to all those who have expressed their warm, sincere, and generous support, thank you. Thank you so much. So, please grab a copy of my book, To Poetry with Love by J.K. Samson, published by Eight Letters. You can get your copy through Eight Letters Publishing or through the J.K. Samson author page in Facebook. So please like, follow, and share that page. Also, if we are friends on Facebook, you can message me for your reservation. So, and then you can share with me your favorite poem in that compilation. Let me know your thoughts about it. I'll be waiting.
Alright. Ayan, meron na kayong commitment from JK ha, na pagka gusto niyo siyang makachika, you know, you want to talk about poetry, you want to ask for some tips, andyan lang siya. You just communicate with him through his official Facebook author page. Okay, thank you so much again and have a great weekend, everyone. Pwede na mag-dinner. Okay. At bago kayo mag-dinner, add to cart mo na. Alright, Jakey, once again, thank you so much. And I'll
Thank you
see you
very much.
around. Alright, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye bye.